Everyone, and welcome to Kevin's Corner. I'm your host, Kevin Horner of Galligan and Manning. Today, I want to talk about an elder law topic. It's one of the main reasons why people seek the services of an elder law attorney when they think about using Medicaid and the assets they want to protect. I'm going to talk about the residence, the home, and some strategies to protect it from being sold or basically losing the value of it to Medicaid. Okay, so to frame this conversation, I'm going to stick with the Texas perspective. Other states have different rules, but in Texas, if you're on long-term Medicaid, you can own a residence and be eligible. Now, the rules are a little bit different depending on your situation. For example, if it's a husband and wife and one person is using long-term care benefits, you can own the residence and there's no restrictions in terms of its value. If there's an individual, there's actually an equity limit which changes from year to year. It's roughly it's a little under $600,000 worth of equity. So if you can meet those kind of guidelines, you're allowed to own the residence and not have it affect your eligibility. Why? Because if you get better from, say, the nursing home's care, Medicaid and the state would much prefer you go home instead of continuing to reside there and have benefits paid for you. They want you to go back. So let's just frame it that way at first. You can have the residence in most cases and still be eligible. That's not what I'm going to focus on. What I'm going to focus on is what happens afterwards. If you're using a long-term Medicaid benefit in most programs, there's going to be what's called estate recovery. And what that is that when you would pass away, the state makes a claim against your estate and tries to get paid back. If you're already on Medicaid, you probably don't have much in the way of liquid assets. Or if you do, most of the value is gone or in some other means. What you're usually leaving over is the house. So that's the main thing that gets used to pay for back to the Medicaid recovery. So how do you avoid and protect the house in this situation? One, if you're ultimately going to leave everything to a surviving spouse, usually there is no estate recovery. So it might be okay by itself, but you can also just insure it by doing some other steps. In Texas, first and foremost, probably the best way to handle this is to make the house non-probate by preparing what's called a ladybird deed. Now, a ladybird deed is where you execute a new deed. It's a revocable one. You don't have to go through with it if you change your mind, but it's a deed that transfers the house as soon as you pass away to new beneficiaries. That can either be the beneficiaries of your estate plan. If you have a trust set up as part of your estate plan, you can actually name the trust as the beneficiary, which is something we do frequently because it dodges probate and gets the house over to the right estate planning vehicle after you pass away. And Medicaid is totally okay with you doing that. They have to review it to make sure it is a valid ladybird deed and it's not just something you're alleging. And as long as you've done that appropriately, it right there can dodge the entire estate recovery and let you protect the house for your beneficiaries. This is similar, although it's technically a little bit different, to the newer statutory construction, the transfer on death deed. The same effect can happen. It's just the ladybird deeds have been done longer and have been reviewed, so usually that's what we end up doing. Excuse me. So that is by far the easiest way to deal with it here in Texas. If for some reason that isn't an option, or if you're someplace else, there are other options, one of which is in certain states you can use a trust to hold the house to make it, one, not count for Medicaid, and then two, also to get to the beneficiaries when you pass away as part of your estate plan. Texas, that tends not to be necessary because the ladybird deed, but other places that is true. And then maybe two other examples, which is just true under federal law, so it's everywhere, is if you're leaving the house or giving the house really to an adult disabled beneficiary, that can be an exempt transfer. It's as though the house didn't exist for your eligibility. And if you don't own it, it doesn't go in recovery. So that can be a good option. You need to be a little bit careful, only because if you're seeking Medicaid and then passing over the asset to another person, an adult disabled child, they too may have their own Medicaid concerns about whether or not they can have it. So you kind of have to take it a little bit cautious, but it can work. And then the last one, which actually was the technique I used in the very first Medicaid case I ever had, was that if you have an adult care provider, a child adult care provider in your home for the 2 consecutive years, I should say, who's actually rendering care in a way that would help stave off you needing long-term care, you actually are allowed to transfer the house to that person for free. And sort of for the same reasons I said in Texas, you don't see it very often. In other states, it's a very useful tool as a way of transferring the house, getting it out of the whole calculus, and then protecting it right there. So that's just a couple of the options. In Texas, definitely Ladybird deed is probably the best option. You may be able to use another trust. You may give it to an adult disabled child, or maybe give an adult care provider in your home, be able to pass it to them. But definitely here in Texas, the Ladybird deed is probably your first and best option. So if you are seeking or considering using Medicaid, or if you're already on it and you want to think about ways to make sure you protect the house, that is definitely the way to look. And you can definitely give our office a call and we can go through it all and see if that still makes sense for you. So with that, thank you very much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you again all next Thursday for Kevin's Corner.